And now, Wandering Rocks. In Book 12 of the Odyssey, Circe outlines two possible routes Odysseus may take to get home. One is via Scylla and Charybdis, and the other is through the Wandering Rocks. These are rocks that drift around the ocean and are virtually impassable for ships. Only one vessel, Jason's Argo, has ever managed to get through them. Odysseus chooses Scylla and Charybdis, so that the encounter with the Wandering Rocks does not actually occur in the Odyssey. But in Ulysses, Wandering Rocks is laid out in 19 mini-episodes, into all but one of which is interpolated a fragment of another action that is occurring simultaneously but at a different place in Dublin, as the city becomes a stage on which multiple destinies unfold at once. This is the first of those episodes, and it's read for us by Shammen McCune.
The Superior, the Very Reverend John Conmee, S.J., reset his smooth watch in his interior pocket as he came down the presbytery steps. 5 to 3. Just nice time to walk to Artane. What was that boy's name again? Dignum. Yes. Vere dignum est aistum est. Brother Swan was the person to see. Mr. Cunningham's letter. Yes, oblige him, if possible. Good, practical Catholic. Useful at mission time. A one-legged sailor, swinging himself onward by lazy jerks of his crutches, growled some notes. He jerked short before the convent of the Sisters of Charity and held out a peaked cap for alms towards the Very Reverend John Conmee, S.J. Father Conmee blessed him in the sun, for his purse held, he knew, 1 silver crown. Father Conmee crossed to Mountjoy Square. He thought, but not for long, of soldiers and sailors whose legs had been shot off by cannonballs, ending their days in some pauper ward, and of Cardinal Wolsey's words, "If I had served my God as I have served my king, he would not have abandoned me in my old days." He walked by the tree shade of sunny winking leaves, and towards him came the wife of Mr. David Sheehy, MP. "Very well indeed, Father. And you, Father?" Father Conmee was wonderfully well indeed. He would go to Buxton, probably for the waters. And her boys, were they getting on well at Belvedere? Was that so? Father Conmee was very glad indeed to hear that. And Mr. Sheehy himself, still in London. Ah, the house was still sitting, to be sure it was. Ah, beautiful weather it was, delightful indeed. Yes, it was very probable that Father Bernard Vaughan would come again to preach. Oh, yes, a very great success. A wonderful man, really. Father Conmee was very glad to see the wife of Mr. David Sheehy, MP, looking so well, and he begged to be remembered to Mr. David Sheehy, MP. Yes, he would certainly call. Good afternoon, Mrs. Sheehy. Father Conmee doffed his silk hat and smiled as he took leave at the jet beads of her mantilla ink-shining in the sun, and smiled yet again in going. He had cleaned his teeth, he knew, with arcanut paste. Father Conmee walked and, walking, smiled, for he thought on Father Bernard Vaughan's droll eyes and cockney voice. "Pilate, why don't you hold back that owlin' mob?" A zealous man, however, really he was, and really did great good in his way, beyond a doubt. He loved Ireland, he said, and he loved the Irish. Of good family, too, would one think it? Welsh, were they not? Oh, lest he forget, that letter to Father Provincial. Father Conmee stopped 3 little schoolboys at the corner of Mountjoy Square. Yes, they were from Belvedere. The little house, aha. And were they good boys at school? Oh, that was very good now. And what was his name? Jack Sohan. And his name? Gallagher. And the other little man? His name was Brunny Lynam. Oh, that was a very nice name to have. Father Conmee gave a letter from his breast to Master Brunny Lynam and pointed to the red pillar box at the corner of Fitzgibbon Street. "But mind you don't post yourself into the box, little man," he said. The boys sick-eyed Father Conmee and said, "Oh, sir." "Well, let me see if you can post a letter," Father Conmee said. Master Brunilinum ran across the road and put Father Conmee's letter to Father Provincial into the mouth of the bright red letterbox. Father Conmee smiled and nodded and walked along Mountjoy Square east. Mr. Dennis J. McGinney, professor of dancing, etc., in silk hat, slate frock coat with silk facings, white kerchief tie, tight lavender trousers, canary gloves, and pointed patent boots, walking with grave deportment, most respectfully took the curbstone as he passed Lady Maxwell at the corner of Digman's Court. Was that not Mrs. McGinnis? Mrs. McGinnis, stately, silver-haired, bowed to Father Conmee from the farther footpath along which she sailed, and Father Conmee smiled and saluted. How did she do? A fine carriage she had, like Mary, Queen of Scots, something. And to think that she was a pawnbroker! Well now, what should he say? Such a queenly mien. Father Conmee walked down Great Charles Street and glanced at the shut-up Free Church on his left. The Reverend T.R. Green, B.A., will, D.V., speak. The incumbent, they called him. He felt it incumbent on him to say a few words, but one should be charitable. Invincible ignorance. They acted according to their lights. Father Conmee turned the corner and walked along the North Circular Road. It was a wonder that there was not a tram line in such an important thoroughfare. Surely there ought to be. A band of satcheled schoolboys crossed from Richmond Street. All raised untidy caps. Father Conmee greeted them more than once benignly. Christian brother boys. Father Conmee smelt incense on his right hand as he walked. St. Joseph's Church, Portland Row, for aged and virtuous females. Father Conmee raised his hat to the Blessed Sacrament. Virtuous, but occasionally they were also bad-tempered. Near Aldborough House, Father Conmee thought of that spendthrift nobleman. Now it was an office or something. Father Conmee began to walk along North Strand Road and was saluted by Mr. William Gallagher, who stood in the doorway of his shop. Father Conmee saluted Mr. William Gallagher and perceived the odors that came from bacon flitches and ample cools of butter. He passed Grogan's, the tobacconist, against which nudes boards leaned, and told of a dreadful catastrophe in New York. In America, those things were continually happening. Unfortunate people to die like that, unprepared. Still, an act of perfect contrition. Father Conmee went by Daniel Bergen's public house, against the window of which two unlaboring men lounged. They saluted him and were saluted. Father Conmee passed H.J. O'Neill's funeral establishment, where Corny Kelleher totted figures in the daybook while he chewed a blade of hay. A constable on his beat saluted Father Conmee, and Father Conmee saluted the constable. In Yorkstetter's, the pork butcher's, Father Conmee observed pig's puddings, white and black and red, lie neatly curled in tubes. Moored under the trees of Charleville Mall, Father Conmee saw a turf barge, a tow horse with pendant head, a bargeman with a hat of dirty straw seated amidships, smoking and staring at a branch of poplar above him. It was idyllic, and Father Conmee reflected on the providence of the Creator, who had made turf to be in bogs whence men might dig it out and bring it to town and hamlet, to make fires in the houses of poor people. On Newcomen Bridge, the Very Reverend John Conmee, S.J., of St. Francis Xavier's Church, Upper Gardiner Street, stepped on to an outward-bound tram. Off an inward-bound tram stepped the Reverend Nicholas Dudley, C.C., of St. Agatha's Church, North William Street, on to Newcomen Bridge. At Newcomen Bridge, Father Conmee stepped into an outward-bound tram, for he disliked to traverse on foot the dingy way past Mud Island. Father Conmee sat in a corner of the tram car, a blue ticket tucked with care in the eye of one plump kid glove, while 4 shillings, a sixpence, and 5 pennies shooted from his other plump glove palm into his purse. Passing the ivory church, he reflected that the ticket inspector usually made his visit when one had carelessly thrown away the ticket. The solemnity of the occupants of the car seemed to Father Conmee excessive for a journey so short and cheap. Father Conmee liked cheerful decorum. It was a peaceful day. The gentleman with the glasses opposite Father Conmee had finished explaining and looked down. His wife, Father Conmee supposed. A tiny yawn opened the mouth of the wife of the gentleman with the glasses. She raised her small gloved fist, yawned ever so gently, tip-tapping her small gloved fist on her opening mouth, and smiled tinily, sweetly. Father Conmee perceived her perfume in the car. He perceived also that the awkward man at the other side of her was sitting on the edge of his seat. Father Conmee at the altar rails placed the host with difficulty in the mouth of the awkward old man who had the shaky head. At Annesley Bridge, the tram halted, and when it was about to go, an old woman rose suddenly from her place to alight. The conductor pulled the bell strap to stay the car for her. She passed out with her basket and a market net, and Father Conmee saw the conductor help her and net and basket down. And Father Conmee thought that, as she had nearly passed the end of the penny fare, she was one of those good souls who had always to be told twice, "Bless you, my child," that they have been absolved. Pray for me. But they had so many worries in life, so many cares, poor creatures. From the hoardings, Mr. Eugene Stratton grimaced with thick lips at Father Conmee. Father Conmee thought of the souls of black and brown and yellow men, and of his sermon on St. Peter Claver, S.J., and the African mission, and of the propagation of the faith, and of the millions of black and brown and yellow souls that had not received the baptism of water when their last hour came, like a thief in the night. That book by the Belgian Jesuit, Le Nombre des Élus, seemed to Father Conmee a reasonable plea. Those were millions of human souls created by God in his own likeness, to whom the faith had not been, D.V., brought. But they were God's souls, created by God. It seemed to Father Conmee a pity that they should all be lost, a waste, if one might say. At the Hoath Road stop, Father Conmee alighted, was saluted by the conductor, and saluted in his turn. The Malahide Road was quiet. It pleased Father Conmee, road and name. The joy bells were ringing in gay Malahide. Lord Talbot de Malahide, immediate hereditary Lord Admiral of Malahide and the seas adjoining. Then came the call to arms, and she was maid, wife, and widow in one day. Those were old worldish days, loyal times and joyous townlands, old times in the barony. Father Conmee, walking, thought of his little book, Old Times in the Barony, and of the book that might be written about Jesuit houses, and of Mary Rochfort, daughter of Lord Molesworth, first Countess of Belvedere. A listless lady, no more young, walked alone the shore of Lough Fennel. Mary, first Countess of Belvedere, listlessly walking in the evening, not startled when an otter plunged. Who could know the truth? Not the jealous Lord Belvedere, and not her confessor, if she had not committed adultery fully, ejaculatio seminis inter vas naturale mulieris, with her husband's brother? She would half confess if she had not all sinned, as women did. Only God knew, and she, and he, her husband's brother. Father Conmee thought of that tyrannous incontinence, needed, however, for man's race on earth, and of the ways of God which were not our ways. Don John Conmee walked and moved in times of yore. He was humane and honored there. He bore in mind secrets confessed, and he smiled at smiling noble faces in a beeswax drawing room sealed with full fruit clusters. And the hands of a bride and of a bridegroom, noble to noble, were impalmed by Don John Conmee. It was a charming day. The lich gate of a field showed Father Conmee breadths of cabbages, curtsying to him with ample underleaves. The sky showed him a flock of small white clouds going slowly down the wind. Moutonner, the French said, a just and homely word. Father Conmee, reading his office, watched a flock of muttoning clouds over Rathcoffey. His thin-socked ankles were tickled by the stubble of Clongo's field. He walked there, reading in the evening, and heard the cries of the boys' lines at their play, young cries in the quiet evening. He was their rector. His reign was mild. Father Conmee drew off his gloves and took his rededged breviary out. And ivory bookmark told him the page. Nuns. He should have read that before lunch, but Lady Maxwell had come. Father Conmee read in secret Pater and Ave and crossed his breast. Deus in adiutorium. He walked calmly and read mutely the nuns, walking and reading till he came to res in Beati Immaculati. Principium verborum tuorum veritas, in aeternum omnia iudicia iustitiae tuae. A flushed young man came from a gap of a hedge, and after him came a young woman with wild nodding daisies in her hand. The young man raised his cap abruptly. The young woman abruptly bent, and with slow care detached from her light skirt a clinging twig. Father Conmee blessed both gravely and turned a thin page of his breviary. Sin. Principe persecuti sunt mi gratis, et a verbis tuis formidavit cor meum. Thank you.